back to Chats with Jenny, where we talk about all things mental health and wellness. Today's topic is 7 tips for how to have a difficult conversation with confidence. So I know a lot of people tend to avoid conflict, but this can only create problems internally for you, because if you're having an issue and you don't speak about it and it doesn't get addressed and it continues to happen, how are you supposed to live at peace with this, especially if there's no change? It may be challenging to have a difficult conversation when you don't have the tools, when you think it's not going to be received well, when you think that nothing is going to change. But hopefully these 7 tips help you out for whatever difficult situation that you're going through, whether it's with your significant other, whether it's your supervisor at work, your family member, or anybody else. Number 1 is be aware of how you feel. You don't want to go into a situation where you're prepared and you're ready to say what you have to say, but it's really fueled by emotion. And so, you don't want to be like, all right, I'm going to have this difficult conversation with my significant other and tell them I want to break up, but it's all based off the emotion of that moment, and the next day you're not even going to feel like that, or the next week. So the first thing is really knowing what it is that you want, or the outcome that you want out of this situation, and cooling yourself down so that you're making logical decisions instead of just solely emotionally based decisions. Number 2 is what we call the poop sandwich. So I know it sounds weird, but think about a sandwich in which the bread, and then there's like the meat, and then there's another bun, and then the bread on top is the good, and then the poop in the middle is all the bad stuff that you want to say constructively, and then the bun at the bottom is how you're going to end it off on a positive note. So good, bad, good. So let's say that your supervisor is annoying you, right? So you could start off with saying, hey, Sally, first I wanted to say thank you for being on top of all of our projects and always trying to be supportive whenever I need help. But I did want to actually say something that's bothering me, which is that when you're upset about something, the way that you communicate kind of makes me feel like I'm not valued, and like you're demeaning me. I don't want to assume that you're doing it on purpose. I kind of just wanted to communicate so that, it could be resolved. But, I do know that you're trying really hard as a supervisor, but here's the good again. But, I did want to bring this up. Or let's say if it's your significant other, you could say something like, I appreciate all of your efforts for trying to make me feel special, but I do want to talk about something that's bothering me, which is that when you don't make time for us to go on dates, it makes me feel like I'm not important and I'm not valued, but I do know that, you're trying really hard, and I do appreciate all of your efforts and washing the dishes and doing all these different things, blah, 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 blah. So like you saw the good, so, it'd be like a compliment, or that you appreciate their efforts, the bad, which is what's bothering you, and then top it off with, I know that you're essentially doing the best that you can, or you're doing well in some other area, right? So good, bad, good, the poop sandwich. Tip number 3 is talk about what's bothering you without name calling. So if you've ever had somebody be like, you're so selfish, or you're not a good person, or you're this or you're that, chances are you didn't really look at yourself and say, hey, I'm not a good person. Maybe you thought to yourself, maybe I'm being selfish in this moment, or maybe I can reflect on what I did could have been a little bit selfish of me. But chances are you're not going to look at yourself and say, I'm a bad person. And neither is the person that you're insulting or name calling either. And so when you call somebody a name like, oh, you're so selfish, or you're so arrogant, or etc., it makes it as to where the point is lost, because now that person is wrapped up in a sort of emotion. Rather than you saying what the actual problem is, how it's making you feel, and what the actual actions that you're hoping for in the other person. That's a more effective tool than to say you're selfish. Another way that you could say that is, I think it would improve our relationship if you thought about me and my needs a little bit more, because I feel like you haven't been paying attention to my needs. Or when you made that decision, I feel like you were only thinking about yourself. For the most part, everybody thinks that they're a good person, and if you call people a name, it's not going to get you the results that you're actually hoping to get. And so not calling them by a name is actually a better technique for you getting the results that you actually want. Number 4, go into the conversation with a positive attitude and give the other person the benefit of the doubt. Don't go into the conversation thinking this person isn't going to hear me out. They don't care about what I'm saying. You're going to project that type of energy into the conversation, and it's less likely that it will go well, rather than you going into it hopeful even if things haven't gone well in the past. Tip number 5 is check yourself. Sometimes when you're having a difficult conversation, you can be so wrapped up in your emotions and what's bothering you that when the other person is actually sharing the things that they're doing, you know, maybe the reason why they're doing it, or the reason why, you know, or maybe things that you're doing wrong, you know, it's important for you to also be able to self-reflect and analyze. Like, let's say you tell your supervisor, you know, I don't appreciate it when you talk to me like this, and they respond, you know, I understand your concern, but I've had to tell you to do the same thing 7 times, and you've had more than enough time to do it. That's kind of like a situation where you have to self-reflect and say, you know what, I was wrong, and I have to self-correct, and I have to be able to apologize and give what I'm looking for as well. Number 6, unfortunately, you're going to have situations in which you handled it perfectly. You said the right thing. You said the good, the bad, and the good. You didn't name call. You went into it super positive and very nice. And the other person is still like, no, I'm not hearing it. I'm not going to change. I don't care. And so depending on the situation, you may actually want to bring in another person that isn't as closely tied, that is going to kind of be objective and be able to tell both of you guys, you know, where you're right and where you're wrong, and kind of diffuse the situation so that everybody can get at least some sort of reasonable outcome in the situation. Number 7 and last is agree to disagree. You may have tried everything, you brought in the other person, and they don't want to see where you're coming from, and for whatever reason, you have to just deal with that person. And so my last tip in this situation is just agree to disagree. It doesn't mean that that person is right or that you have to tolerate abuse, but you know, maybe just to reduce the conflict, reduce all of the emotions. When they say something that you disagree with, you just say, you know what, I see where you're coming from. Doesn't mean I agree. Doesn't mean I think that's okay. I see where you're coming from. Or anything else that works for you that's amongst the lines of just agreeing to disagree, or just saying, you know what, I just have a different perspective, you know, and that's just gonna have to be okay. So I hope that this video was helpful. I know that having a difficult conversation is, for the most part, it doesn't feel good, but in most situations it is needed. You don't always have to talk about everything. Sometimes you can just, you know, move on and keep it pushing. But if it's a conversation that needs to be had, there's tactful ways for you to do it and get the results that you want for the most part. Peace, love, and blessings. I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you guys for watching, and thank you guys for all of the support. As always, guys, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe.